swashbuckler he was aiming to portray. The 20s flappers seated behind him were sisters, both in their 60s and apparently enjoying a week without their husbands, who were on a hunting trip. Next to them, wearing a witch's outfit, Beatrice Carr sat dozing. She was the oldest of the group. All 6 guests were members of a book club and lived in the same retirement community in a Portland suburb. They were also the inaugural guests at the newly renovated Merry Ghost Inn. Melanie and her grandmother had bought the centuries-old house on the northern Oregon coast 6 months earlier, intending to turn it into a bed-and-breakfast inn. But shortly after they had begun redecorating the rooms, a fire had destroyed a fair portion of the house. Forced to delay their grand opening until now, they'd struggled to manage the renovations and finishing touches to the inn. Melanie had been determined to preserve the old-world charm of the house, and both she and Liza were pleased with the results. The living room looked spectacular with its wall of books, dark purple drapes, smoky gray carpeting, and the sparkling marble fireplace. They had replaced the brown leather couch and tweed armchairs with the lighter gray couch and chairs, accented with purple cushions. The grandfather clock in the corner had been a great find, thanks to a friend in the antique business, who added just the right accent to the room. Now they were officially open, with 6 guests who had booked for the entire week. They had bookings after that all the way through the holidays. Things couldn't be better, Melanie thought, as she turned her attention back to the magician. Except for Walter Dexter, who seemed determined to disrupt the poor magician's performance. Nick had apparently given up on making things disappear. "I would like someone to help me with this next trick," he announced. He looked across the room and nodded at Cindy. "You, young lady, will you help me?" Walter snorted again. "What's the matter? Can't find your egg?" One of the flappers tittered, earning a frown from her sister. She leaned over and muttered something, making the younger woman hunch down on her chair. Cindy had moved forward and now stood directly in front of Walter. She very slowly leaned down toward him until her face was inches from his. Melanie caught her breath. Surely their new assistant wasn't about to yell at one of their first guests on the very first night of his visit. She was about to step forward to intervene when Cindy leaned in closer and whispered something in his ear. Walter looked as if he would refuse whatever it was she'd asked of him, but when Cindy smiled at him, he shoved his hand in his pocket and withdrew something in his closed fist. Cindy held out her hand, and after another moment of hesitation, he dropped something into her palm. Still with her back to Nick, she said loudly, "I have something in my hand, and you're not allowed to peek. Can you tell me what it is?" Nick put his hand over his eyes and lifted his other hand in a theatrical gesture that brought another snort from the reluctant participant. Cindy silenced Walter with a quick shake of her head, and the room grew quiet as Nick concentrated. At that moment, the door opened, and Liza appeared in the doorway. "Why is everyone so quiet in here?" she demanded, just as Nick dropped his hand from his eyes. Melanie grabbed her grandmother's arm, pulled her gently into the room, and closed the door behind her. Liza mouthed the word "sorry" at her and turned to look at Nick. He seemed not to notice the interruption, but stood staring at the back of Cindy's head as if trying to read her mind. Finally, he stepped forward. "I see a shiny object with sharp edges. Ah, now I have it. The young lady is holding the gentleman's pocket knife." Light flashed off the knife as Cindy waved it triumphantly in the air. "Nicholas the Magnificent has done it again," she called out amid a smattering of applause. Walter stood up and grabbed the knife from her. "Magnificent, my ass. I saw better acts than that in kindergarten." "Then maybe you should go back there," Cindy said sweetly. "Yeah," Joe said, scowling at Walter. "Give it a rest, you miserable old codger. I don't know why you even came down here with us. Look at you. You couldn't even dress up for Halloween." Walter's face turned red. Some people have too much self-respect to make a spectacle of themselves. Joe was about to speak again when Gloria put a hand on his arm. "Let it go, Joe. He's not worth making a scene." "Let him make all the noise he wants. I'm going to bed."